mine beside it. The postmaster had his sundial drawn in the dirt because he didn't have a watch. There was one little radio in the town. There was a near fatality accident there for grandfather Dennis, who that family moved in that year to Walgett, and they're still there. And one of them we saw the other day, Alan, nicknamed Timber, out at the sheep yards. The near fatality was grandfather Dennis had a fall, and a roof fall, and Frank Brown got down very bravely and helped him out there. And
may I cut in at the moment now? Frank Brown, is there any connection between Snowy Brown?
A brother.
He was one of the brothers, and he has a big history, a long history in mining. An original at Coober Pedy from the Opal books. He went to on one of these Commonwealth Trade expositions chosen by the Australian government to take opal to Canada. Prior to his decease, he died about 1967, I believe.
Can we go back a little bit in your lives again? You met your wife in Sydney while you were nursing. Yes, I see.
So we had sort of a honeymoon at Kurt Stevens' hut at the Graven.
On wagga beds, I might say. Two single wagga beds.
Wagga rugs,
the hessian between two logs.
Corn bags, the camp oven in the fireplace.
Yes.
What year was that?
That was 42, and Kurt Stevens was alive. It was his hut, and he was he that found probably one of the best gemstones in the world, the light of the world. Ted Brown cut it, I think,
and named it.
And Ted Brown, he was another brother?
No, Ted Brown
was
my
father,
Snowy.
Snowy.
That was
Snowy.
That was his trade, cutting opal. He was a miner as well.
Because
he found also the
here at the
Pride of Australia, and he named that too, with Tom Irwin.
Right, I want to get onto those things in a moment. We'll go on to that now because you preempted me questions actually in my mind. Could you tell us the years that the year it was, or the years when they were working up on the phone line, was it not? Or the feed line? Where they got those good
The phone line.
The phone line, yes. Do you know anything about it and what year it was?
I was going to...
That's after you came back from the Ground. No, before.
It was before we went to the Growan.
You went to Cracker Goldfields when you were 11 years of age.
Yes.
So it must have been sometime in the 30s when they worked up there.
It would have been.
And how many partners was there?
Only the two. Tom Irwin and Ted Brown.
And Ted
Snowy Brown.
Snowy Brown.
And Tom Irwin's wife was a Brown girl.
Yes, Minnie Irwin was my father's sister.
Yeah.
In that family there were
brothers-in-law.
13 of the Browns and 17 in my mother's family, children. But of course, they didn't all live in those days. There were a few baby deaths with pneumonia in those days.
Getting back to the great strike, or the find of these great stones, there's a story about the butterfly who was involved in that particular mine, the Pride of Australia, the Flamingo, the Black Prince. As I've been able to put the story together, what other great stones did they get out of that mine?
I wasn't actually sure that they all came out of the one mine.
You wasn't?
No, I was not. Actually, when the only thing that I recollect so much of was when my father and Tom Irwin found and named and cut the, well, it wasn't cut then. Before it was cut, the Pride of Australia, which they named. In those days you had to take it to the pub and show it all around. Now my father wasn't a pub goer, but he went, and it went from hand to hand around the pub, and one fellow dropped it and it went into 3 pieces, which took a lot of value off it. I'm not sure whether the pieces each piece. I think it was the whole thing.
Was it the
Brought-
Pride of Australia or the Black Prince that was dropped? All the stories and the books and the records don't show it as the Pride of Australia.
No, I feel that you might be wrong there.
I could be wrong then.
Yes,
I could be
the
wrong.
Pride of Australia is recorded at the moment as being in America. The Red Admiral or the Butterfly, whichever name you like to call it, is recorded at the moment as never left Australia. In fact, it's gemologically been claimed as the most brilliant piece of stone, not necessarily opal, stone on Earth. So it must have been some piece of opal. But the Black Prince, I think, was dropped.
Could have been the Black Prince. yeah.
And there's a controversy over where it was dropped, at the pub or down in the house. So you'd know your father
That's
dropped
what
it
I-
at the pub.
Yeah.
Yes, because it went from hand to hand and another person dropped it.
Yeah.
That's all I know.
Bob Bruce
Mm.
says that it was dropped in the house down there. But I don't know. I'm just trying to get these points because they're relevant points and they're very important to history.
The first time that I've ever heard that it was dropped in the house.
Never heard of
First
it.
time you've ever heard it was
Heard,
dropped in the
yeah.
house, yeah.
It was always.
We had a small-
So it's going to be a controversy forever where it was dropped.
Yeah.
All we agree on is that it was dropped and it was broken.
Yeah.
Mm.
You had this small cutting room down there.
It's supposed to have been a better stone, far superior stone to the Pride of Australia in quality.
Yes, this could be. You see, I don't know.
What was you saying, Walt?
Oh, his cutting room was at the corrugated galvanised iron that Georgie Bowles lived in Morella Street. That was his home. And
Not George. Not
Georgie
George.
Bowles and Joycey Bowles.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, they lived
First
in
of
it.
all, and then the daughter lived there. Right? Yes.
Patty lived there after her father
That's
died.
right. Mm.
Georgie Bowles was a renowned cutter. He's in the Opal books. And that was Nellie Brown. Bowles he was. Nellie Brown she is now. Her
Yes,
brother.
I did know George Bowles. He has passed away since I've lived here in the last
Mm.
25
Yes,
years at
yes,
Lightning
he would
Ridge.
have.
Yes.
Mm.
Well, that house that he lived in was old mother's home.
Mhm.
And that's where he had his cutting room. And it was only small. Wouldn't be too many men fit into it, I wouldn't
No.
think.
Many a great stone master passed through his house and his home, his cutting room, I should say.
Mm.
But getting back to your father, Olive,
Mm.
again, because he's the important person here in this conversation at the moment, because his name is really wrote in the stones of Lightning Ridge and is a part of the history here.
Yes.
We know that he found the field known as Snowy Browns 4 Mile.
That's right.
With
We
Tom
know
Irwin.
he found this particular patch up here with Irwin.
That's right.
We know that they obtained these outstanding stones. Do you recall any other good strikes, or you, Walt, that he, in the years he was here, made?
Went for a long time without opal, I know that.
Well, that's a common denominator
He
in
used to
everybody's
say,
mining
thank God
experience.
there's 4 of us, he'd say. Thank God there's no more of us.
He went kangaroo
We went
shooting.
kangaroo shooting to sell the skins.
That I would even say now that probably 95% or approximate of all people who mine opal at Lightning Ridge don't average the dole at this time, even though there's a lot of opal around and a lot of money around,
That's right.
for sure. Very good.
He moved up to Cracker when I was 11. Cracker was a goldfield in Queensland near Theodore and Eidsvold in that area. It's abandoned now, of course.
And
How
we
long was
worked.
he up there? How long was he up there on the gold at Cracker?
It wouldn't been any more than 6 months. But us girls worked. There was a Dennis girl there, Gwen Dennis, and my sister Lil and I. We had to work really to help out. Only in a camping home really. But we napped the stones for the big mines. We napped stone and it had to be
For the battery.
for the batteries to work on. We napped these stones and they had to be they would fall into squares and they had to be about 2-inch square. We had long handled small hammers to do this with. Now the trucks would come around and pick this up and we were paid £4 for a square yard between the three of us girls. But being girls, the men loaded it onto the trucks. If it was men doing the same thing, those men had to load it onto the trucks.
Then you come back to Lightning Ridge from Krakow?
Yes, we came back to Lightning Ridge and I went to school here again with Mr. Murphy, our teacher.
What correspondence, wasn't it?
No, I went to school here and through the classes until 6th class. When I was 11 I passed my QC, that's a qualifying to go to high school, at 11, and we did it by correspondence with our teacher.
How many children was
There
there?
were only 5 of us doing that.
How many total children at Lightning Ridge School those days? Approximately.
I'd say approximately there'd be around 60, with 6 different classes and 1 teacher.
One teacher?
Yes.
60 children.
60 children.
Different story today.
It is a different story today, dear old
That's-
Mr. Murphy.
That's after the year of schooling that you had at the Growan, where there was.
No, yes. So in the interim,
Before you went to Krakow.
we'd been out to the Growan and had some schooling there. Now a lot of people didn't believe there was ever a school there or a tennis court there.
How many pupils were
How
there?
many children were there at the Growan? Approximately.
About 40
So the Growan was quite a comprehensive field.
with 1 teacher. Oh yes, very much so. That was when the Pride of Australia, the Light of the World, was found out there. My father cut it.
One pub.
And your father was cutting out there, basically,
Oh, yes.
and not so much mining.
Bit of each.
How long would he have been out there?
A matter of 4 to 5 years.
Have you a rough idea of the particular year you may have gone out there to live after you've come back from Krakow?
Or before.
Or was it before?
Well, I did come back to the school at Lightning Ridge when I got my QC.
Before
So it was before.
So it was before.
Yes, it would have been. I would have been
Somewhere
there
in
from
in the mid-20s.
10 to
1925, you were in a school photo here that's in Gem's book.
that's 1925.
I was just trying to get at the approximate years. What I'm trying to do is build a picture up of your father's movements. That's what I've been trying to do. And so he went out there for about 4 or 5 years to the Growan, somewhere in the mid to the late 20s it'd have to be. Slot in that area somewhere, if you was born 18.
Yes.
So it'd be somewhere around the late 20s. But mid to late 20s, depending on whether
Yes.
it was before you went to Krakow. After you come back from Krakow, you're not quite sure on this point. Can you recall any of the other characters who may have been at Growan at the time?
Kurt Stevens.
Quite a lot. Yes. That was when Kurt Stevens found the big stone. But
Can you remember the man himself in your mind's eye
Oh
at the moment?
yes,
Can you
yes.
tell us what he looked like? First and foremost, what did Kurt Stevens look like? Just to look at as a man.
Well, of course he was German, but he was a short, stoutish man.
Cheery.
Cheery, very cheery.
He couldn't remember the colour of his eyes. That'd be asking something, wouldn't
No,
it?
he
I
had
remember.
light blue eyes.
Light blue eyes,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
remember I was quite frightened in that my father slept with that stone and a revolver under his pillow every night while he was cutting that stone.
Kurt Stevens, was he a married man?
No,
He was a single man.
he did have a mate. I can't remember the mate's name. A young fellow was his mate, but he was a German also.
He didn't get a great amount of money for that stone. He got sufficient money to start off a bakery there.
That's all.
And I believe the
didn't-
remnants of that oven are still out there. We just didn't track those down.
So he became the local baker to the
Mm.
Growan.
Yes.
He had a bit of a food outlet there, sort of a shop, He'd have some scales
Yes,
and he'd lay
yes,
up
he
some
did.
veggies or sugar or something.
Mm.
So if there was about 40 children at the Growan going to school, there'd be a heap that wasn't going to school. So the population of the Growan must have been 300 or 400.
No more than that.
Oh yes, more than that. It was quite a big town.
There's a pub.
We had the pub down on the Growan Creek.
Down on the Growan Creek, not,
Yes.
not where it is today, of course. You
We
had
had
a
a pub out there.
Yeah, the
Oh, yeah.
Jackie shop.
Oh, Jackie Shop's the pub. That's right. No, it was right down as you go over the Growan Creek, just on the right-hand side before you cross the creek.
So there was a pub, a school, this gentleman had a bakery. What else was there out
A
there?
post office,
Post office?
tennis courts,
Tennis courts?
Who ran the shop?
which we had nothing of now.
Was there any
Yes.
police constable there?
No. No, we had a policeman at the Ridge, but we
And there
didn't
was a
at
shop?
Growan. Yes, my aunt Ted Regan's mother, my father's sister, run a shop on making her own ginger beer and hop beer.
There wasn't the usual
Selling
sly grog shop out there
No.
you found on most other
Nothing like that whatsoever.
fields.
And those two boys, when those two Regan boys, Tim, my cousin, he was the one that was shot up here at the tennis court and lost his life. But he and his brother Ted, who has just recently died, they are double cousins of mine actually, because brother and sister married brother and sister in our two families.
Well,
the
Ted
Regans and
carried the
Brad.
game on, didn't he? Ted was wheeling and dealing and cutting.
He was, yes,
I recall
always
him,
in April.
Yes, I recall him very active in the game 20 odd years ago.
Yes, he was always in April. But when they moved out there, those two boys, Ted and Tim, drove the mob of goats that they had. It took them 2 weeks to drive these goats the 30 miles out to the Growan.
Is there any other characters out there that come to mind before we come back to Lightning Ridge? It's very difficult to find somebody now who has some comprehensive knowledge of the Growans.
What's his name?
Who was out
The
there?
old, the old man that's out there now, he says to
Arthur
me,
Pritchard.
you and I are the two originals from this place, and his name is Arthur Pritchard. Pritchard, is it?
Pritchard.
Pritchard, yes. Arthur Pritchard.
And he was there in your day out there.
Oh, yes.
He would be about 83, I think, his age, and he was
Still
born
mining.
at a staging camp which was a type of inn between Walgett and here on the old road, so he informed me. So he wasn't born in the fields.
I haven't spoke to him for possibly 8 or 10 years, long before we started this type of interviewing.
Mm.
And if you've just recently spoke to him, how do you find his faculties? I would consider going out there if I thought his memory was okay.
Oh, yes. I'm sure it would
He's
be.
very alert
He's
and
very
and
alert.
very healthy, and mining.
Yes,
Other
he's a
than
wonderful
Sunday
old
morning when he
man.
does his washing, he lives alone.
Yes,
as far
I-
as we know, he was a single man.
Actually, I know the old gentleman, but I've also painted his camp once or
Right.
twice.
Inside?
No, on my artwork, in my
Yes.
artwork, and but I haven't spoken to him for a long time. Haven't seen him for a long time, and
He's
I thought,
very
Yeah.
well, still
He-
mining.
so I shall try and arrange to have an interview with him out there.
Well, he told us the remnants of Harry Zack's cottage is still there. Of course, we saw that, and not deteriorated greatly as regards a museum piece, but it's not habitable. That he told me that old Dad Snowy Brown assisted in the building of the
construction.
construction.
Harry.
Harry
Zack's.
Sachs.
Yeah. Yes, I knew Harry reasonably well. I'd done a little business with him once, many years ago. He told me one or two stories about how they treated him here during World War One, you know, etc., the government, how they interned them and wouldn't let them go out of certain areas.
Mm.
It's tragic that we never got any of these old Germans on tape before they went, for the posterity's sake.
Mm.
Who else is out there that, who else was out there, I should say, that comes to mind of any importance?
Georgie Pyle was not out there. Fred Bedell were not out there.
No, they weren't. The Hagers were there.
The Hagers went to Krakow from here.
Well, we'll come back to your father. After you left the Groland, did you come back to Lightning Ridge? Or did you go elsewhere?
No,
Came back here for
I came back
continuation of your
here
schooling.
because of the continuation of my schooling, which was only up to the QC, and I was about 11 and a half.
Then did you leave Lightning Ridge with your family, or did your whole family leave Lightning Ridge?
No, you went to work.
I went to,
Station for
well, yes, I was working here for the Reeveses in their shop. Nellie, she was one of the Woodhams, married Stan Reeves, and I worked for them in their shop first of all. Then I went out to Corinda to work.
Yes, thank you. Let's go back to Stan Reeves, the gentleman himself and his shop. Can you tell us a little about him? We have nothing on Stan Reeves, and he just recently died.
That's right.
We just missed out on all that info.
That's right. Well, I did.
She's only just left Walgett too.
I called to see her because they told me it was the end garage. Ted Regan told me that before he died. That was the end garage. So I called there, and they told me that she'd sold out and gone. So I missed seeing her, and that she's now in Port Macquarie in units.
What shop did he have here?
Yeah,
The shop he had here was a bakery, but of course his parents were bakers to start with.
Did
There
they
were
live
three
here?
boys. Oh yes, up from the pub further up, on that side of the street.
The new post office might be there.
Whereabouts the new post office is. Yes, right there.
Can you describe Mr. Reeves at all in any detail what he was like those days? I know what he was like, 10 or 15 years ago, but then.
He was a plumpish man, not tall, but very pleasant.
Never changed, apparently, because that's how he
No.
was when I knew
His
him.
wife was tall and thin, and she was one of the big Woodham families. And all her brothers rode horses and had to do with some sort of moving cattle, droving. Big family the Woodhams were.
How many other shops were there at Lightning Ridge this particular time?
Well, as well as
office.
the bakery, opposite the post office in those days, there was the Irwin shop. Also, well, my grandmother had a shop there to start with, around about where
Bob Bruce.
Bob Bruce lives now, right there.
Your grandmother, that's very interesting. Can you tell us any details about your grandmother? Not only what she looked like, but where did she come from? What part of Australia or overseas?
Ireland.
She came out as an immigrant.
And her husband,
And her husband. They were Irish, very Irish.
the Regans.
They were the Regans.
They came from Killarney.
They came from Killarney
Okay.
to where? What part of Australia? Have you any of that info?
I believe South Australia. And they went through the goldfields and came up with the Browns. To
They-
Circus Gully, the Browns were established. Circus Gully, as is known today, was where they had the whole
Right.
family.
Horse
Before
and
Nellie
cart.
Brown was married to Jackie Bowles, and the women had to cook on the outdoor and had their laundry outdoor, of course.
So that means if they come to Circus Gully, that means that they come here before this particular town was surveyed and they was up at the old
That-
town.
Well, they were, and Snowy Brown told me that before they were at Newtown, they were at Old Town, and there was floodings there, and they said there's a lot of opal still in that area that's subject to flooding.
Yes, I know where Circus Gully is. I took Herb Brown up there one day on location with the camera, and he explained it precisely where it was and what used to go on, etc., etc. And so that's how I could correlate that they must have been here prior to 1906, when this town here was surveyed in
Yeah.
1906, and they moved down from old Town to Newtown, as it's known, slowly, bit by bit.
I might tell you something about the other Brown family, but Snowy Brown never ever told me anything about Herb Brown's side of the family, the boy that married Nellie Bowles.
They were just a separate family. Jack Brown still lives here, and Herb that married my cousin died recently. So they're quite a separate family, but we all went to the same school together.
And of course, old Bob is still alive here.
Bob Molyneux is my first cousin.
No, Bob
Bob
Bruce.
Brown, Bob Bruce too.
Bob Bruce.
Bobby Bruce. I'm sorry, I crossed your wires there. Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Bob,
yes.
Bob Bruce knew you the other day.
Yes, old Bob Bruce
Yeah.
knows me.
Yeah,
Oh yes,
I'm sorry.
because Auntie Bruce was his brother that married Pearl. Otherwise, we're not related.
Now, we've diversed quite a bit from your father. I've tried to keep on the track of your
Yes,
father.
what a shame.
But that don't matter. We've picked up information along the way, which is
Mm.
important, particularly in relationship to Circus Gully. There's very little information about in relation to that, and if you know any more, well, on that question,
He
I'd be
did-
very happy.
What I've related to you, Len, is only just what I was told by him, and even elaborated on by other knowledge that other people have mentioned. But I understood that he was born at Peak Hill, and his sister was born at Tinga when they were on that was originally on Gold, and then on to Tin. So the whole family were moving out towards Burke. He told me that he came here ahead of the family, and then the books tell me that he went back with some monies and they came across.
Brought the rest of the
I
family.
think he told me they walked beside this bullock dray.
Hmm.
But there were other brothers that
Oh, a lot of yes. There were twins. Dusty and Dum were there.
you're not interested in the
You're
other
not.
brothers.
You're not interested in the whole
No.
family.
Oh yes,
Oh,
any
yes.
information at all.
Yes,
This
well,
is-
they all lived here. A big family, as I said. There was a family of 13 children in the Brown family, and my mother's family was a Regan family with 17 children.
Well,
But
Ted
of course, they
Regan,
didn't
Ted
all.
Regan's dad was known as Stumpy,
Yes.
the little strong man. And
He's a very short man, and that is why Ted Regan and Tim Regan, that was killed here on the tennis court, we were double cousins because brother and sister married a brother and sister out of the Brown family and the Regan family.
and the whole family mined here, though, all those brothers. And then they went further afield. One of the twins, they were called Dumb and Dusty. One book I read said Dummy and Dusty, but it was Dumb
It's
and
not
Dusty.
just Dumb and Dusty.
And that Dumb, he settled in Toowoomba. And Dusty, in his retirement, went with his sister at Harris Park, Ted Regan's mother, near Parramatta. One brother, a single man, went onto a cattle property in the middle of Queensland, a place called Capella, between Emerald and Claremont. And Bob Brown and Ted Brown went there to assist in this property, and that's where we became engaged. We went up there to meet the family, on my part.
Well, coming back to Ted, your father, back here at Lightning Ridge. Did he spend his last days here, or did he leave Lightning Ridge?
Came the war, and he moved. to
Yes, he
Sydney.
moved to Sydney. He didn't spend his life. He died in Sydney.
He left here during World War II, is that
Yep, he was in this CCC, this Civil Construction Corps, as a carpenter.
Before, yes.
So was
yes.
Frank Brown.
Mm. He came to Sydney because Lil and I had moved, and my mother and father moved to Sydney and lived in Granville so that they could be with us, more or less.
And he died in 1945.
When he didn't, yes, because my husband Wal was away at the war, and my father and I were very close. And he said to me, "You'll soon have Wal home. The war's ended." We had one little girl, and he died before Wal could get home.
How old was he when he died?
57, wasn't
We'll work it out.
He died quite a young man,
he?
really.
Yes,
Oh,
really
yeah.
a young man.
Yeah.
By today's standards.
He wasn't
Mm.
60.
Heart attack.
Had a heart attack.
I think he was about.
Yes.
Did he have a history of heart problems?
No, no.
Not at all.
On the first one, he died.
Well, he was born in 1890, I think.
How old would he?
1885 he was born. He was born in 1885. He was 30
He
when
died
he
in-
married, and Ol's
He was
mother.
about 60 when he died.
60,
Ol's
that'd be.
mother was much younger.
My mother was only 17 and he was 30 when they were married.
Mm.
Now, there's a funny thing about their marriage. As you know, a minister, someone to marry them, has to come out from Walgett. There was nobody here to marry them. They'd set the date on this Saturday so that they were to be married.
That was
and
1915.
it rained and
Got
rained.
the marriage lines. You might.
Mm. But it did rain very, very hard. Now, my mother was a Catholic person.
The Regans.
The Regans were all Catholics. The Browns were all Church of England. Now, my father said, you get whatever you like. You must be married if your parents want you to be married with the priest
All in the one church.
in the Catholic. Well, it poured rain on that day and the priest couldn't get out from Walgett, and there was a minister in town from Angledale End who was Church of England, so they got married Church of England. But a week or two later the priest came out to see and called on my mother. Working in the shop she was actually, but she'd come in to serve in the shop after wiping up, and she still had a saucepan in her hand, and the priest told her that she was living in sin, and she threw the saucepan at him, and that is a true story.
Well, there's many stories told like that, but we know what young people are like. They can't wait when they're ready to be married, can they?
That's
We
right.
were all the same once, weren't we?
I guess.
We're all the same.
I guess.
But it's interesting to hear that. Well, I can't think of any other points in relationship to your father. It's crucial that we get any little thing you can remember about him on tape, because he's one of the cornerstones of the history of Lightning Ridge.
He was a very strict man with us two girls, but my sister was not like I was. I was the strong one. And my sister was with my mother, and she became a very, very good cook because she was with my mother. But I was the one that chopped the wood, pulled the water out of the well, while my father was away kangaroo shooting. I did all the... And also I went with him carting wood and carting water in those days from the government tank.
Olive, those days, did many women, if any, mine here at Lightning Ridge?
No, only Noodle.
Only Noodle.
I went down the mines with my father quite a lot. I climbed ladders down. In the olden days, I went down in a cowhide bucket. I was lowered down with a windlass in a cowhide bucket, quite a lot. But also we went down a mine that was next door to our house to get cool. When it was 122 in the shade, we went down below in the place next door which we shared this mine with, and we'd forgotten the butter this day. We're all down there to have lunch because it was 122. There was only the nursing sister up on top. Everyone had gone below somehow, but the nursing sister had a very sick old man, so she had to stay up with him. But we'd forgotten our butter at the last minute out of our Kalgoorlie safe, and I said, I'll run back for it. So I climbed up this hole, but it was next door, but it was across a bit of a road with a lot of gravel on it, and I didn't bother to put my shoes on, and I had blisters feet. Blisters on my feet from running across and running back with that butter.
Yes, I can understand and sympathise with you. I recall here 63 and 73 were 2 years that I never want to see again. Heat here at Lightning Ridge. Dramatically.
It can get very hot and can get quite cold. I've wiped the crossed off the poles as I've gone to school on winter mornings. You could just scrape it off.
Wally,
So-
Wally, we're going to swing around to you now, if you don't mind. And you had to meet your wife, and you had to come. You met at nursing, that's correct. You told me you met at nursing. Is that
Yes.
how you became interested in the oval aspect of life too? Through your wife?
Oh yes, only
Yes.
through oil. But we had some trips up here which people today just would not believe because of the type of roads and things. And I think one of the most interesting ones was probably the time we got stuck in Coonamble. The road was out between Walgett and here, and the police wouldn't allow anyone to come to go onto Walgett until the mailman could get through. So the police wouldn't allow me, and they said to have a look at that log that's in the water at the bridge. And I used to look at this every day. We had a built-up black soil road above Gilgandra there that we stopped to let a black Humber hawk come south, and as he was coming he stopped and he said, where are you going? I said, well, we're going through the Lightning Ridge. I had a trailer on that time. And he said, well, I was told in the town that there'd be no accommodation. So he said, I'm going down to Gilgandra or somewhere to get accommodation. He said, you might as well turn around. Well, we couldn't turn around. It was only a single track of black soil. So we carried on to Coonamble. We got a family room, and each day I used to look at this log there, but it wasn't the water was not receding. And up along came the black Humber hawk. He'd come north again, and he said, I'm going through Quambo and Corinda way. He said, I believe I can get through there. He said, would you like to come along with me, like the company? And I said, oh no, we won't shift, we won't move. And that night in the hotel some men came in who'd been camped at the crossroads beyond Quambo, and they said, there's only 17 mile of black soil and it's trafficable if it doesn't rain anymore. And I said, I'll give it a go tomorrow. And I said, did you see a black Humber hawk? Yes, bogged down to the hocks, he said. So we got as far as Quambone, and there was a Pantecticon about 45 degrees across the tracks, the deep tracks, and we'd straddle the tracks. And I had to go around this thing, and the trailer hit the table drain and smacked into the back of the right-hand side of the car and broke the tail light. And we swam the 17 mile, I guess, through this black soil. And the speedo, of course, read more than that because of the wheels spinning, but I certainly didn't get bogged. And there was a semi-trailer type tabletop truck right down to the tabletop, and they had a tent erected on the side of the road and a fireplace there, and just had to wait till it dried out before they could get through. And when we got to this junction, they said, go through the fence, and as you get near the Gilgai, there's miles of mushrooms. So we did this, and the mushrooms were there all right. It was sort of wet mud and like a pig face, wasn't grassed. So we got our hats and we filled them up with mushrooms and brought them in here to Nellie Bowles' house, and they laughed their heads off. The racecourse down here was loaded with mushrooms, so they'd had the rain there also. But there were quite a few interesting trips like that through those bad old roads. There was one time we came out in a truck, which was the method of transport. There was 44-gallon drums and stuff from Walgett. It was a part Aboriginal chap was the driver, and going along there was a sulky pulled up in the middle of the road, and an old fellow was asleep, probably full of red Ned, and his horse had kept walking till he got sick of walking and had stopped. So this part Aboriginal boy swung the truck around and went down the table drain. So we had to unload the truck, and he got an axe out of the sulky, and we chopped some timber to use for leverage to pull our unloaded truck forward and then load it up again.
Well, I was learning to ride a bike, and I had to go down to the baker's for a loaf of bread. And I said to my dad, can I ride the bike? And he said, well, as long as you don't run into the tree of knowledge. And do you think I could miss it? I was steering so to miss it, and I looked at it so hard I went fair into it, and buckled the front wheel and had to walk back with the bike and then walk for the bread. I was nearly to the baker's, but I didn't. I took the bike home.
Well, Olive and Wally, I want to thank you both on behalf of the Historical Society for your time, for the information you've passed not only on to us, but for posterity. Thank you very, very
Thank you.
much.
Yes, thank you.
Len, I didn't mention about the book that, you know, that I've left down there of all those accounts from the Regan shop, which you will see. You didn't want that on the tape, though, did you?
Oh, we should certainly. We can talk about that. We'll continue the tape on that point. Yes, certainly will.
Well, this book that belongs to all is a father's book, and it would be almost 2 inches thick. It's a great big thick journal, and it's got all the accounts from the Regan shop for many years, and all the old names are there, the Irwins and the Bruces and the Dominics and the Cowans and Francis Brady. All the old names are all in there with all the accounts and the prices of all these commodities, the candles, so many a penny and so on. But also he's got a lot of opal accounts that opal was sold by the ounce and not by the carat. And this book I've discussed with Len, and Gan Bruce has it at the moment, and I'll show you about it to find some use for all these commodities.
I would ask now for permission for the Historical Society to have a loan of this book for a period of time, and I would personally take responsibility if you would agree to this. Basically, because such types of material, you can't put a money
It's
value
lost.
on them, and if it's not looked after, if it's not recorded, if it's not investigated and wrote up, it's gone forever. It's gone forever, and it's probably one of the last little bits of information left in writing
This is
in
right.
such detail, and
This is
it'd be
right.
tragic if it was ever to be lost.
Well, you'll be
It
surprised.
will never
You'll
be
be
lost.
surprised at the price of the first quality.
Now, what I'm asking
gem
you
opal.
is, can we, or can this society through me, I'm a very good friend with Dan, as you know,
Yes.
can we have a loan of the book for a while?
Yes.
That's the important.
As long as it's looked after and passed back into our family.
Yes, well, most of the material is kept here in this house for
Yes.
the society until such times as we obtain or find a place of our own, you know,
Yes.
for the organisation. But what we're trying to do is to, for posterity, is to put all these things together. The time will come, and very quickly too, if none of this
Yes.
is raked up, it'll be lost forever. Nobody will know anything. The next generation's coming along will know nothing. Absolutely nothing.
That's right.
There's a lady, 93, down at Toukley, and she was one of the Dennises, and married into the Campbell family. And one of the Campbell boys and one of the Irwin boys went away mica mining up about to the Hartz's Range above Alice Springs. Now that lady has got some heap of old photographs, and one of them she showed me. She was born in the latter part of the 19th century, about 1895 or something. She's 93 anyway.
She's 93 now.
And she was 13 years of age, and she's got a photograph, and she herself was in the photograph of the first professional bare knuckle prize fight here in 1910 in the Ridge.
Can I ask you her name?
Oh
and her
yeah, I've
address
given
now?
that. I've given that to Gan, and I can
Can you
pass
put
it
it-
on to yourself.
You
Yes.
can't remember it.
Yes.
Oh yes, she's remarried now. Campbell died. She's a Mrs. Painter, Mona Painter. She was one of the Dennis family, and she's at Gorokan. She's on the telephone, and I have her address.
Yeah, but you haven't in your mind. You haven't
No,
in
you
your-
can't
I just
record
wanted to
that
put it
there.
on tape because Toukley is not very far from my people, and I often
She-
get down there. And
she is,
I'd make a
um,
point of seeing her.
She's got all her marbles. She goes to Housey and
Faculty school, quite okay.
cards
Very, very
playing.
good.
She lives on her own in her own neat cottage, and she's never changed over the many years.
has many photos?
How many voices she
I
produced?
wouldn't
quite
know
a heap.
how many. I think it's quite a few of very old photos. She has been back here on bus trips, I know, but that who she's met and who she's talked to of the old people I wouldn't know. But
we have facilities for copying everything.
yes, One thing I was very intrigued with, which never happens now, with the old people living here, Granny Cowan and Granny McNeil and Granny Dominic, they were wonderful old people.
Did you know the Murrays, the original Murrays who started the Opal up there with Charlie Nettleton?
No. No, I knew Charlie Nettleton, but I didn't know the Murrays.
You knew Charlie Nettleton?
Oh, yes.
Can you recall in your mind's eye what he looked like?
Didn't have a moustache.
He was
I saw a photo
tall
of
and
him.
thin, I think. A tall man.
You'd only be very young.
But I'd be very young, and I can picture him now as tall and thin.
You
That's
cannot
all.
recall any other characteristic about him?
No, but I do know a lot of those old men that when they went to patch their pants, it was Brunton's flour across their backside, just with a bit of flour bag.
Yeah.
Oh my
There's a
word.
lot of the walls, of course, in those
Granny Cowan's house was lined with Women's Weekly
over Hessian.
over Hessian, and she kept on putting up more pictures, and I'd visit her to see how she was, but I'd go round reading all these and looking at pictures because it was right around all the walls.
Did she have the ant bed floors in her place?
Yes.
Whereabouts was her home?
Near the, the Dooley has changed course, I believe, but
No, not really.
Not really?
No.
Well, the Dooley run beside her place, and you had to cross the Dooley to get to George Cowan's place. But Granny Cowan was this side, on the left-hand side before you cross the Dooley. And the road went right across there, because the Dooley used to run right beside our school. But it has changed.
Well,
Oh,
Was
they've
put
helped
through
it-
pipe.
They've helped
They've
it a
pipe,
little.
yes, so my
Yeah.
cousin said.
They've helped it a little.
Yes, so Bob has told me that they've put some piping through. But, well, we had a wonderful life here. I think we could have done
What
a
do you
lot
think of
worse.
Lightning Ridge now, personally?
Well, I wouldn't be bothered going. People say you should go round and see all the new homes, the beautiful homes that are there. That doesn't interest me. I've got relations and friends in the little old places, and that suits me better. And of course, I have a lot of relations here.
You feel like a lot of other people feel the town has become just another pea in the pod, like every other
course.
town between here and Sydney, small town. The only things that which are of interest to most people that come here now is what's left on the fields.
Mm. Well, I've just recently, my daughter was with us when we first came, and she has a little daughter, and we took a photo of Nellie Brown's house, and that's the house where I was born. But she was not home, so I couldn't take her in. But the house has been changed a little bit, but it's still sitting on the same place.
Yes, it's got a veranda around it now,
Yes,
which it never had
which
before.
it didn't have before. But I was born there with my grandmother only to look after my mother when I was born, and I was born a blue baby. I was in convulsions, and she had the dish of warm water, quite warm water, and the dish of cold water, and did the wrong thing first. It's a wonder I'm here.
there was a lot of eye trouble with the Brown boys. But Ted Brown, he didn't have that eye trouble.
No.
But Dusty, Bob and Frank all had a similar problem that Bob Molyneux's got. And
It's a
Bob's
trachoma thing,
trachoma. And,
caused through the dust.
Bob's mother was Auntie Maud,
Auntie Maud,
and
yes.
she finished up blind, and so it would have been that problem.
She had
And
to
she
follow
lived-
a string to go
she
to
lived-
find her door.
She lived
Put a string up.
next door, and in that house that he's in now, Bob Molyneux.
Bob Molyneux is in the
She
old
lived-
Auntie Maud's
and
house.
next door was her daughter, who had married a chap named Allport, and he was a miner, and she had a string to get us from one house to the other.
Mm.
Very nice lady. Bob's mother, that would be.
Anyway, it looks like we'll finish it off now. Once again, I'll say thank you.
Yes.
We've said it before, but thank you very, very much for all your information and for your time.
I can't see any. Oh, there is a little red light, I think, yeah. Yeah, there is. It's not very.
Well, on behalf of the Lightning Ridge Historical Society, I'd like to introduce Bert Smith, a very, very experienced opal gouger here at Lightning Ridge, a man with tremendous knowledge and experience, a man who knew a lot of very, very important earlier miners. Bert will tell us when he came here, but today is the 2nd of September 1987. We're going to hand the mic over to Bert now, and I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting interview. Thank you, Bert.
Thanks, Lenny.
The first thing we must ask you, Bert, is your full name
Yes.
and your date of birth, if you wouldn't mind,
Yes. My name is Herbert Thomas Smith. I was born at Wollabadar, New South Wales on the 13th of December 1911.
please. Bert, I would like to ask you now a little bit about what sort of work you was doing and what was your father and mother involved
Well,
in
we
before you
had,
come here?
my father and mother had a little farm. We still have it in the family down at Willow Tree. And we had dairying when I was young, and then latterly I learnt to shear and came out this way shearing sheep. And I married a nurse from Colarendabri Hospital, Kathleen Slattery, and was sure about here, and we lived in Colarendabri for a couple of years. And then we came out this way shearing, and it was very hot summers, and we came here to try and get away from the heat for a few weeks, down underground, mining, to try and have a rest from the hot weather.
Could you
in
tell
the
us what
shed.
year that was?
That was about 1944, then.
It must have been a hot summer.
It was very, very hot summers.
Who'd
yeah.
you come out here with, Bert?
Les Hughes from Colarendabri, and we met our friend Bill Dominic. He was an old hand from here. He was reared here down at Lawn. His father and uncle had Lawn. They had it transferred from a mining purposes lease to a grazing lease, and that's how they got Lawn. And latterly the elder people sold out and went to Colarendabri. Mr. Bill Waterford lives there now.
Can you tell us a little bit about Dominic Senior, because nobody seems to know very little about his early history here at Lightning Ridge?
Oh, he was very experienced in opal mining as a boy and a young man, and they were great miners, the Dominics. They came from Whitecliff to here. They were professional opal miners, and he knew a lot about opal mining and about Lightning Ridge.
Can you tell us any specific mine that he was involved in that may have historical value?
Yeah, the two elderly ones had their big, good mine up at the phone line. They had the best claim there, very rich claim in the olden days, about 1913 or so. And Bill worked about here, and then latterly he came back here about 22 years ago. He'd been wool buying, and then he came to live here, and he worked with his son down just above the dead man's claim at the 3 Mile, and they got a pocket of opal in the floor there. And
could I mind cutting in and asking you to go back to the early mine up on the line about 1913? Was that the claim that produced some of those famous stones we often hear about?
It was right joining it, Lenny. Snowy Brown and Tom Irwin's was where the Butterfly and the Pride of Australia came from. It was right joining of the boundaries met. And Dominic's had mainly beautiful light opal, where Snowy Brown and Tom Irwin's claim was black opal.
Do you actually know yourself, if you was there now, would you know where the boundaries were?
Yeah, round about, yeah.
There's 2 old box trees up there.
Yes, on the northern side of the road as you go up, Lenny. That was where their claims was, a little stunted box tree out on the left, just to the right of that.
And was that the Black Opal area or the Light Opal area?
Oh, well, the Black Opal area was right on the southern side of that tree, the roots of the tree, and the Light Opal was on the western side of it, towards, between it and the road.
That's very, very interesting information, Bert. Thank you very much. We'll go back now, and I'll ask you a few questions before we come back to Opal again.
Yes.
When you come here to Lightning Ridge to live, what did the streets and the town then look like? You personally express them.
Well, it was very crude, very rough. The places were very poorly built, and there wasn't any roads. There was no shires in this area then. They were just bush tracks, really, and there wasn't any water much, and there was a government tank down there, but often it was dry, and there wasn't many tanks on the places. And this house was here then, but I didn't live in it then. We lived in one up near the Bush Nurses, and we bought that one. And after, down where Max Fuller lives, for 11 years, we lived there. But, it was very crude.
But what was the people like?
Oh, very good. The people were mainly old, elderly people. They were very good type of people. I thought they were exceptionally good. Very friendly, very helpful in every way. Yes.
What do you think of the contrast between them today and as
Oh,
you see Lightning Ridge?
I think it's progressed with buildings and that very much, and lovely roads and electricity and water. It's really come on tremendously, and it seems to be growing all the time.
But what about that personal relationship of friendship and people? Has that
No,
grown
it's
with it?
not quite as good, I don't think.
Not quite as good. I think you and I have got much in common there, Bert. We both remember it when it was dust tracks to the gate.
That's right.
And
yeah.
it was a lovely place to live in.
That's
I felt
right.
anyway.
Yeah, that's
Very,
right.
very much so.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
When you first come here in 1944, who ran the post office?
Jack Francis then.
Was he the original? He was the buyer when I come here later on.
Yes, he was buying opal and he ran the post office. And then he bought some land, some grazing land about Bendina and then Wyoming. He had for some years, Jack, yes.
Yeah, one or two of his sons still around here today.
Yes. Andrew, he's here, and Terry sometimes. And Billy's down at Dungalia, yes.
And in 1944, who was in the corner place, the pub?
There was an old fellow called Bill Donovan for one of the publicans. There was a few that didn't stop long. And Lenny Coble, and that's a couple. Some of them I didn't know, really, Len. Money was a bit scarce. I didn't have much money to drink.
And of course, those days it was known as the Imperial, not the Diggers' Rest.
That's right, yeah.
In fact, I recall the Diggers' Rest, I think, was about
Yeah.
24 years ago when
That's-
Derek Skeets had it.
That's about right,
They
yeah.
changed it to the Diggers' Rest.
That's right.
Well,
Yeah.
what about buying a few goods? Was there any stores here?
Oh, yes. Stan Reeves had a store here about where the newsagent is now. It was bread and groceries and meat, twice a week, meat, and there was a little store over at the post office, too. Oh, and Bruce's had a little store, yes. Little bark store it was, made out of bark. And,
Can you remember when Dawson's took over here?
yes, I can, Lenny. That was about 1944. Artie Dawson had been working as an overseer on Lanilla, and Stan Reeves wanted to sell out, so he sold out to him, and he came in to educate the Dawson children at this school. They had a long way to come to school, so they came into town to live.
Well, When you first come here, can you recall there was some of the old hands must have been still alive here. Was Phillipson still here when you come here, wasn't he?
Jack Phillips, oh yes, yes.
Can you
yes.
remember much about him? I can't get any
Oh,
information off
yes.
anybody about that man.
Yes, well, he was one of the men, him and Phil Brady and another man that dug the Flame Queen at Bald Hill in 1922. They were working together. I often heard old Jack say they were digging along and they got this beautiful big stone and they thought, oh, we're going to get a lot of opal now, but they never got another thing. It was all on its own.
Isn't that amazing how that often happens? Big stones sit
Yeah,
by themselves.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's in France now, the Flame Queen.
Is it?
I think I read it is,
Somewhere.
Len.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you know the old man Ernie Sherman? He was gone, was he or not?
No, I never knew him. I knew Greg later, but I never knew his father, mate. He came here in the Depression times, buying, like when the good stones were being shear-bladed at Cancels and that. He got a lot of them. Of course, money was very hard and scarce, and he came here and bought them then. A lot of shearers used to come here and pull the dirt out of Cancels and shear-blade it. There was a lot of good stones that was in the band there, and the old men missed a lot by chopping pieces of hard band out with a pick, and the stone would fly out in the hard band, you know. And
Where was the band? In the roof or in the floor?
right in the roof, Lenny. The
Right.
steel band and a white band just under the steel. That's where Cancels carried its opal.
What did you think of the quality of Cantrell?
Well, Cancels opal was recognised the best opal ever found in the world. Old Cumming at DY, he was a professional cutter that cut a lot of this opal from Lightning Ridge, and he told us once we were in Sydney that it was by far the best opal he ever cut, and he said it's the best opal ever been found in the world. Cancels.
Yeah, it's beautiful opal.
Yeah. it is.
Unfortunately, when I come here to live at Lightning Ridge, Cancels was finished.
Yes,
and I hardly see
it
the Cancel
is.
stone.
No, you only see little dregs, but I believe like Kirk and Mars and Hanlon's, when they had their claims of good big parcels, it was so powerful, the colour, it was breathtaking. And when it went overseas to London and that, the gem dealers had never seen colour, any gem or anything in the world to compare with it, and that's really where Lightning Ridge started to get its reputation
On
from.
Cancel.
So the old men told me, yeah.
The brightest opal that I've ever seen since I've lived here, and I've only been here a quarter century,
Yeah.
the brightest opal I've ever seen has come from Newtown.
Yeah, it was good too. There was
Very
some
brilliant.
good there.
Yeah. Can you
Yeah.
remember old Paddy O'Hara?
Yes, I heard he got a good stone. I
Yeah.
think.
Do you-
Yeah.
Can you know any? Can you remember any personalities about Paddy?
No, I didn't know him very well, Lenny. I didn't sort of meet him much, you know.
The thing that amazed me is that in those days he got 90 pounds a carat for a stone up there.
Yeah, yeah.
I never seen the stone, but my brother Ted seen it.
Yeah.
He said it'd talk to you in the dark.
That's right.
So
It
it was a
would.
beautiful opal.
Yeah,
But I must admit,
yeah.
the best average opal in all the years I've been at Lightning Ridge and all the years I've been buying, as I
Yeah.
said, I didn't see much of Cantrell's.
No.
Was the 9 Mile and the 6 Mile.
Yeah, that 9 Mile was very good
Big,
quality.
big bars,
Yeah.
beautiful black, old man black opal.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And when you got a bar of opal
Yeah.
out there, you had plenty to play with.
That's right, Lenny. That's
But-
dead right.
But you
yeah.
can get gemstones everywhere. We,
Yeah.
we both know that.
That's right, yeah.
What about old Mick Bauer? You got to know him while you was
Yes,
here?
knew him well, worked with him, Lenny.
Well,
Some
you-
of the time,
Well,
yeah.
that'd be great. Did he ever
Oh,
tell you when
great
he come out
fella.
here?
Huh?
Did he ever tell you what year he come to Lightning Ridge or come out from Germany?
He did, and I just can't remember exactly what year it was. It was about... He told me stories. He told me once him and his mate, when they were boys, young men like, were doing a walking tour up through northern Germany along the Russian border, and they were absolutely starving. He said it was cold weather, and they come onto a house and there was no one about, and they looked in and there was 2 big hams up the chimney. They used to smoke them, and he said we had to take one, we were that hungry. And he said the tables were all set ready for people to have their meal, and there was no one about. He said, I often wondered when they looked up the chimney and there was a ham gone.
He was an old gentleman, but wasn't
He was,
He was an old
yeah,
gentleman.
extra good. Yeah.
I'd be very interesting to know. I think he come here just after World War I or just before.
I think so. I just couldn't tell you, Lenny, about that part of it. I just never heard him mention that war or anything. He never mentioned wars.
He did tell me